what is it like to be a Pro Vice Chancellor? Today we're here with Professor Byrne. She is a Pro Vice Chancellor Business from Griffith University. Hello, Caitlin. How are you doing?
Hi, Puck. I'm doing really well.
Thank you so much for your time once again.
I'm very
So,
pleased to be here.
thank you. Let's start with the first question just to give a background to everybody. What is Pro Vice Chancellor?
It's a funny term, to be honest, Puck, and it's not used, across every university, but it's certainly an academic term, and it's really would equate to, in some universities, an executive dean role. So really providing strategic oversight to a faculty or a group, in our case, with the business school, where we have a number of disciplines coordinated together and a fairly significant agenda of education, research, and engagement.
Right. Now, thank you so much for the background. Let's jump to, so what do you do in a day of life as a Pro Vice Chancellor or Executive Dean?
Every day seems to be different, to be really honest with you, although there's a rhythm. And I think that's one of the things that I'm learning. And I've only been in this role for 2 years now. And I think the university rhythm tends to work on a 2-year cycle, or at least that's been my experience. So there are going to be some parts of your day that fit into a weekly, fortnightly, monthly, quarterly kind of cycle. And there are certain parts of your day that are fairly predictable. And a lot of that relates to the governance cycle of a university and being part of that, because we operate in a very highly regulated sector, a sector that's going through some uncertainty at the moment in terms of the broader policy landscape. And how we manage both our education and our research agenda in a financially sustainable way and in a way that is aligned with the values and the priorities of the university requires us to kind of have these regular governance points through the day. But outside of that, there's so much to do with people, whether it's engaging with our leadership team more broadly, individual academics and departments, our professional teams, to really bring all of the different parts of the puzzle together. That's a really big part of the job, but also, of course, engaging with our external stakeholders. So it's an interesting role because there's a great deal of diversity. There's a strong emphasis on governance and decision-making and providing approvals. And there's both the inward and outward representation with internal and external stakeholders.
Sound like a lots of heavy responsibility that you are doing here. I will touch on the governance shortly. Now, there used to be a rumor that PVC or Pro Vice Chancellor, that's a short form for PVC, always in a meeting all days, every days. Is this true or is not true?
There are a lot of meetings. I can say there are a lot of meetings. Again, that goes in some respects to the governance cycles and the various committees that are in place. And I think whilst many of those are very important, we're also constantly looking at how can we thin some of this out. But I do think leadership, and it is a leadership role, leadership is about connecting with people. And so one of the things I really like to do is spend time, at the cafe where I can catch up with people right across the institution, in informal ways, as well as the formal kinds of connections that we make. But yeah, managing the calendar is a very significant part of the support for a Pro Vice Chancellor or anyone in leadership in academia. And it can be a bit of a challenge.
Definitely. I like the tips about, having close conversation in terms of engaging with your staff and working with people, so to earn their trust, to understand what they're going on in terms of directly or indirectly through the informal engagement. That is very rewarding in that sense. I will make a note there. So I'm not sure if you're aware, but in the future, in the far future, I hope to become a Pro Vice Chancellor or Executive Dean in the future. Not sure like when
Fantastic.
now, but yes, we'll see. Can I ask you, what is the rewarding part of this role?
There are so many, Park, and it's great to hear that you have leadership aspirations, because I think, that's that's so important to the sector going forward. Um, the most rewarding part, I think, is I love working with academics, you know, being surrounded by people who are advancing really quality research agendas, research that has such impact, whether it's impact that's quite local in terms of our own immediate community, or impact that extends beyond that immediate community. I find that really, for me, rewarding. And my job really then is to enable an environment within which our academics can be successful in the way that they pass on that knowledge through learning and teaching, as well as in the way that they're able to advance their own research and communicate that out.
Yeah.
So I have to say, the Pro Vice Chancellor is not the star of the show. The star of the show really are all of the people that work within the group or the faculty, and my job is enabling them to be
Yes.
stars.
I think you make a good point there, and it's also remind me of, I think at the time when you were the director of the GAI, which is Griffith
Yeah.
Asian Institute, you have done quite a few projects that is from DFAT and other organization and agency in terms of apply research into the real world. Now, as a PVC, obviously you come from a specific discipline, but your business school is actually very big. There are
Yeah.
marketing laws and many other things, and some school have ICT and all that. So
Mm.
how do you keep up with these all different elements that may or may not be relevant to you, and then support them to the best ability?
Yeah, well, it probably comes from my background, Park. I don't have a traditional academic background. I began my career as a diplomat. I spent the first 10 years of my life as an international lawyer and diplomat policymaker, of my professional life. I've worked in private sector, in community. I came to academia quite late in life and did my PhD, when I had 4 young kids and was working in the public service. So my professional career has been about leadership and working across very diverse subject matter fields. So for me, that's the beauty of this kind of a role. You have this incredible bird's eye view of a complex terrain of interconnected subjects and disciplines and agendas. And so, yes, as a business school, we are quite comprehensive. We range from tourism and marketing through to political science and international relations, with accounting, finance and economics and business strategy in between, and all sorts of other things. I think the real challenge here is, how do we connect the dots? How do we really foster a sense of interdisciplinarity? Because that's where, in my view, successful business learning and research comes to the fore. So I draw on a lot of the skills from my previous life in senior public service and private sector leadership roles, in terms of facilitating the conversations that allow us to join some dots.
Thank you there. You did mention about challenging with the connecting the dots. So apart from connecting the dots, I'm sure that you have to make a lot of difficult decisions throughout the weeks and the month. How do you deal with some of those difficult situations? And if you don't mind, what could be some of the example of those difficult situations or conversations?
Mm. That's a great question, and there are many challenging conversations that you have to go through, or challenging situations. Um, I think for me, in the role that I have, we have some very clear priorities, strategic priorities. We operate within very clear parameters. Some of those are quite hard parameters, and I'm thinking here about the financial parameters within which we work, and increasingly in an uncertain kind of environment. I think we have to be very clear on what it is that we say we want to do, how we're going to do it, and then we follow through on that. When you have those kind of strategic guardrails in place, I think it becomes easier to communicate, as an institution, where it is you want to go. So strategy matters. But equally, culture matters. So the way that you communicate decisions that might be disappointing to individuals or groups of individuals, I think it can make the difference. Yes, I have to say no a lot, and it doesn't always come naturally. You know, I think at heart someone who likes to please other people, but that's not always possible. And being very clear on where I see this institution going and where we as a collective leadership see the institution going helps me to work within the guardrails, to have conversations with compassion with people that mean it's a no on this instance. And often those conversations relate to, you know, financial support, potentially from, you know, providing internal funding for certain activities, closing some functions down that perhaps we have had in place in the past, and recognising that the institution goes through cycles of change. And so being able to identify new opportunities, but also let go of things is important to an institution in its ability to grow and to move forward. So I think trying to frame conversations that might otherwise be difficult in those terms helps. Separating the issue from the individual is also really helpful, because none of this is personal. It's really about how the institution moves forward.
Exactly. I actually have been trained before. As I mentioned to you that I want to be so and so, there were some of the lessons that I have been trained in terms of how not to take things at work to go to my home and then try to sleep a bit. Do you have any suggestion on you know, sometimes you might have made some decision, some people got upset. How do you keep that feeling, emotion at work and then try to make yourself still sleep at night?
Oh, I have a practical one suggestion for you, Park. I meditate a lot. I probably meditate in the morning and in the evening, and a lot of it is about recognizing who you are as an individual, what is the essence of what it is you're trying to do, and not spending too much time ruminating, you know, continuing to think about things, because you have to be able to make decisions and move on, and being able to let go. Practicing mindfulness, I think, is really important. Letting go of the thinking that can sometimes be a little bit destructive.
Yeah, definitely that this position is not just come with a cool titles, but it's come with a heavy responsibility as well. So anyone want to, you know, interested in this have to be mindful. But I think I'm sure that is really rewarding experience, and what you can do for the people and the society is amazing. Now, can I don't want to use myself as an example, but let's say if there's someone want to become a Pro Vice Chancellor in the future, what is a pathway of 5 or 10 years before that?
Look, it will be different for everybody.
Yes.
I think it's about, and in my case, you know, I'm not a traditional academic. I don't have the traditional academic background that many of my peers may. My background is in a particular discipline, as a practitioner in a particular disciplinary area that I've developed an academic approach to as well. And that happens, it's political science, which is unusual for a business school then to have a political scientist or diplomat as the Pro Vice Chancellor. So I think recognising that you can craft your own model towards leadership is important. For someone who has come into academia and come through academia, you know, early on in their career, I think it is important to demonstrate that academic excellence. And then as you develop and gain leadership positions, more senior academic positions, taking on leadership roles then becomes important. Leadership roles that build community, that build profile for the institution, not just the individual, and demonstrate kind of a civic and collaborative approach can be really helpful in building that career pathway. Getting to understand the finances, the operational requirements, as well as the strategic vision and approach of the university finding ways to be involved in, enterprise-wide or faculty-wide decision-making and then enterprise-wide decision-making. They're all things that I think build your skills and knowledge for a leadership pathway, as well as your network. And that matters.
Yes, I really like what you suggest in terms of the finance and then HR element. So some of us could start with, say, acting or deputy head of department, something like
Exactly.
instant, and then move up from there or through the research center perspective, because so anything to do with managing money and people and the budget and all that.
And resources, yeah, that's exactly right. And thinking through the kind of tension that sits between the individual interests, but the operational priorities and the strategic imperative of the institution, being able to kind of recognize that complex landscape, and demonstrating you've had some experience in engaging with it.
Right, amazing. The last question that I have today is that if you were to have, if you can give one suggestion to your younger self, if you can give one suggestion to your younger self, what would that be?
Would it be just one thing? I think it would be 10 things that I would suggest to my younger self. The first thing would be exercise patience. Things don't happen quickly in an academic world, and that's okay. And actually, you learn over time, and that's okay. The second, I would like to give three things actually. I think the second thing I would say is academia requires you to be to put yourself out there and to be really putting yourself out there, exposing yourself to criticism in so many ways, recognizing that that does not reflect on the value of you as an individual is, I think, is essential to maintaining your happiness and your contentedness in the space. Criticism and critique is so important. It's about continuous improvement, but it doesn't reflect on the value of you as an individual. And so be careful of comparisons. We do need to utilize, peer benchmarking and things like that, including through promotions processes. But be careful of comparisons, because you have to craft your own model, you have to craft your own journey and narrative, and they're all very unique. So stay true to yourself is probably the core theme there.
Very good suggestion in terms of like, crafting yourself the way you see yourself growing in the future, because you cannot compare yourself with other people. Just like what you mentioned, your pathway is different compared to mine or many other people. So it's good for us to compare with other people, but if we go to the point that it's become negative, then it's not very good and healthy for the relationship. I really like your suggestion about when you make a decision, not to rush it and then take some time to go with it, because things does not happen overnight. So I really love that suggestion. And this is what is it like to be a Pro Vice Chancellor with Professor Caitlin Byrne, Pro Vice Chancellor, Business from Griffith University. Thank you so much, Caitlin.
Thank you, Park. Great to chat with you.
Thank you.